Anyways, we've got. Do we have our guests lining up here? Oh yes, here we go.
Oh, excellent.
Yes,
That's
so
good.
Let's
that
welcome.
Takes the pressure off.
That takes the pressure off. We're welcoming Bill Federer to the show. Bill, welcome.
Hey, great to be with you.
I'm going to let Ed give you a little intro, and then we'll let you loose upon the American public.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Bill, long time no talk.
Hey, Ed.
So, Bill here is in town. He's at Grace Bible Church, or Grace Baptist Church, rather, in Belleville this afternoon. He's finishing up a seminar on Islam and America's Christian heritage, and it's a very fascinating the way he handles that. I've heard it now, and he was at the Willow Run Tea Party Caucus at the Big Sky Diner last night, and now he's joining us today to talk about that same subject. I think you'll find it very interesting. But before we go on that, I'd like to ask Bill to tell us a little bit about how he got into this gig. We had a chance to talk to Bill quite a bit, my wife Sherry and I, and we found him to be a very, very warm human being, very, very decent man of integrity, a good Christian. And because I'm saying this because you don't know when you just watch somebody on TV what they're really like behind the scenes. And I just want to give accolades to Bill for what he does and how he does it. So, Bill, how'd you get into this?
Well, you're kind, Ed, and I heard someone say a long time ago, a big shot's just a little shot away from home. And anyway, my dad was a historian. He was an attorney and head of several historical societies in St. Louis. One was the Carondelet Historical Society, a little French area that was sort of predated St. Louis by a couple decades. Another was the Chatillon de Menil Mansion, the fur trapper. So they'd have the roundup in, Colorado. They'd have all the fur trappers come out of the mountains once a year, and they'd sell their furs. Well, they'd bring all the furs to St. Louis, and they would sell them. And it was the big fur exchange, and until the King of England started wearing silk hats instead of fur hats, right? And so it basically saved the beaver. They were being chased almost to extinction, so had that not happened. But anyway, my dad was the head of those historical societies, so I sort of grew up. Whenever we vacation, we'd stop at French Fort, Spanish Fort, Indian Reservation, Civil War battlefield. We had like a library in the house, but it sort of impacted my view. And I minored in history. I got a degree in accounting, but it wasn't until years later, and I was teaching some Bible classes, helping out at a church, and found some, quotes about what some famous people said about God. And I thought, this is interesting. We got God in our pledge, we got God in our coins, and I'm going to go to the library, check out a book, and read about this. But I couldn't find one. So I started reading through all the messages and papers of the presidents. Every past president, their addresses. I was shocked to see James Madison had a day of fasting and prayer when the British burnt the White House. John Adams had a day of fasting and prayer during a threatened war with France. Even Woodrow Wilson had a day of fasting and prayer to Almighty God when we entered World War I. And, of course, Franklin Roosevelt had a D-Day prayer. Truman made the National Day of Prayer an annual event. Reagan made it the first Thursday in May. And then I read through all the colonial charters, and I was shocked to realize that every colony was started by a different Christian denomination. Virginia was Anglican. Massachusetts was Puritan. Rhode Island was Baptist. New York was Dutch Reformed. Delaware and New Jersey were originally Swedish Lutheran. Maryland was Catholic. Pennsylvania was Quaker. Connecticut and New Hampshire were Congregationalists. And guess what? They didn't get along. They would chase each other out of each other's colonies, tar and feather each other. It wasn't until the Revolution started that they all had to work together against the King of England. After the Revolution, they began to tolerate each other. Right? First Protestants, and then Catholics, then Jews, and but it was under the states level. So some states expanded religious freedom a little faster, others didn't. Sort of like today, some states have marijuana and others don't. Some states like Nevada have prostitution. Thank God the rest don't. Back then, some states gave a little more freedom, and other states had blue laws where everything was closed on Sunday. But it was up to the people in the states to decide. That's the way it was up until 1947, when Hugo Black, put on the Supreme Court by Franklin Roosevelt. He had never been a judge before in his life. He was a Democrat senator, and he takes religion out of state's jurisdiction, puts it under the federal, and within one generation it sort of morphs into them including secular humanism as a religion, and all kinds of, beliefs of right and wrong. Had draft dodgers during the Vietnam War, wanted to be conscientious objectors as an atheist, and the Supreme Court said, when someone holds beliefs with the same conviction as those who believe in a religious deity, those beliefs constitute their religion. And so now all atheism is considered a religion. People say, what? Yeah, in 2005, an atheist prisoner in the Wisconsin prison system wanted to have a non-Bible study Bible study. And the prison system said, no, you only get room for a religious study. Well, the sues goes to the federal court, and the judge says atheism is the prisoner's religion. And it is incumbent upon the courts to use a broad definition of religion that includes theistic and non-theistic beliefs. Because atheism is his religion, even though it specifically denies the being of a God.
But it is a religion.
So here, to not prefer one quote-unquote religion over the other, they kick God out, which ironically is effectively establishing their religion of atheism. So we see that backslidden from the time when the founders settled the country and there were Christians of different denominations.
So by that rationale, then, shouldn't we be protected from atheism and humanism because they are religions and keep them out of our government?
I think you're hitting it right on the head, yeah. So, yeah, let's have separation of church and state. Let's keep the atheists out, right? And so what's the federal government supposed to do? Nothing. They're supposed to throw their hands up when the subject of religion comes before the federal government. They're supposed to say, we have no jurisdiction over this. We throw it back to the states and then let the people in the states decide.
Bill, you were talking about our history and you're discovering our history. You said something earlier about a nation and its history. There's a quote. Would you like to repeat that?
Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Arthur Schlesinger Jr. was on John F. Kennedy's staff, and Schlesinger said, history is to the nation what memory is to the individual. So have you ever met an individual who has lost their memory? Maybe they have Alzheimer's. They forgot who they are. They forgot who you are. They can be taken advantage of really easily. Well, guess what? We have national Alzheimer's. Here we are, the freest country the planet Earth has ever seen, and we forgot how we got here. And as a result, we're letting these freedoms just get taken away from us. And so when I share these stories, I feel like I'm in a sense giving, somebody their memory back. It's like, the lights go on. This is who we are as a people, right? And so there's actually a communist tactic called deconstruction, where you separate a people from their past, get them into a neutral where they do not remember where they came from, and then you can brainwash them into the future you have planned for them. It's a sales technique. If I was a toothpaste salesman, the first thing I would do is say negative things about the toothpaste you're currently using. You're still using that old stuff. It'll eat the enamel off your teeth. Ooh, you're repulsed by it. Now I got you into the neutral. You're sort of open-minded. What are all the toothpaste out there nowadays? And then I can give you my pitch for this Target and Go breast freshener stuff. And so they do this in the classrooms. They tell the kids negative things about the founders. They took land from Indians. They sold people into slavery. And, the students are repulsed by them. Now you got the kids into the neutral. They're sort of open-minded. What are all the belief systems out there? And then you can give them your pitch for socialism or LGBT or Islam, right? And so we see this happen in Europe. Europe went from a Judeo-Christian past, right? It used to be Catholic with cathedrals and then a Protestant Reformation and then Jewish neighborhoods. But then Europe went into a secular neutral with the French Revolution and Napoleon spreading this French secularism all around and say, hey, anything goes, free sex, LGBT, and now Europe is entering an Islamic future, with Muhammad being the number one name for newborns in London, Brussels, Milan, and girls getting raped on the streets of Cologne. And the Europeans are scratching their heads thinking, how did we get here? Easy. You cut ties with the Judeo-Christian past, and then you went through this transition phase of the secular gay agenda, and then it's quickly co-opted and taken over by Islam. So in a sense, all the transgendered agenda is a transition phase from the Christian past to the Muslim future.
Wow. Oh, my gosh, Bill, you just really brought me down.
I told you.
It's not like I didn't know it, but you made it clear cut there, and just amazing. Just amazing.
So you're saying Europe forgot its history, and that's how they got to be where they are. And you said taking advantage of. Actually, I'm thinking of a friend of mine who has Alzheimer's and basically become dysfunctional. You just can't function, and that's where we have found ourselves recently. And I'm hoping that the Trump election helps pull us away from that.
Yeah, I think we've gotten somewhat of a reprieve from this agenda, but if the other side ever gets back in charge, they will be back with a vengeance, and we could see these freedoms evaporate quickly.
Yeah. So, Bill, let me ask you. So, as you were describing the demonization part that you would do as a toothpaste salesman, or as what our school system is doing to kids nowadays, this is exactly. I was thinking of Trump. This is exactly what the media, the left, and the establishment is doing to Trump. Every day they're on the news demonizing him for stuff that even 2 months ago they said. So they're being completely hypocritical about it, but they're just bashing it every day. You'll see Schumer out there, and he looks like a complete fool because those of us with memory of 2 months more know that he was saying the same thing, and yet they're demonizing him every day, trying to get the American people to turn against him.
Yes. So Hitler's propaganda minister said that a lie said often enough becomes the truth. So it's once you get rid of a God, then all history is something that can be manipulated to promote an agenda.
Yeah.
And so there's no absolute right, there's no absolute wrong. Your absolute right is your agenda. That's what Saul Alinsky said. And as long as you're committed to your agenda, whatever achieves that agenda is right, and whatever opposes that agenda is wrong. And
I'm always fond of saying that history belongs to those who write it, and sometimes to those who rewrite it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that's a rather Orwellian.
But it's as true as it comes, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I heard that somewhere or if I just made it up. I'm not going to take credit for it because I might have heard it and it's in my subconscious from somebody. But it's very true. So
it is. I heard another little saying. There's three groups of people: those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and those that wonder what happened.
That's me.
So I tell people, why don't you be that small percentage that makes things happen? Don't just sit back and that leads into my new book. It's called "Who is the King in America?" I'm going to be speaking at it tonight at the Grace Church in Belleville, and I go through all of world history, and I study what is the most common form of government. And I found some interesting things. The first thing was that human records begin around 3,000 or 4,000 BC. Sumerian cuneiform on clay tablets in the Mesopotamian Valley. Today that's Iraq. Well, 3,000 or 4,000 BC, and we're around 2000 AD. That's around 5,000 or 6,000 years of recorded human history, human beings writing down human records. And 6,000 years is not that long. It's only 60 people living 100 years each back to back. Everyone's met someone who's lived 100 years or close to it, maybe a grandmother. We're talking 60 grandmothers, and you're all the way back to the very beginning of recorded human history.
Wow.
But the question is, what's the most common form of government? Well, let's see. What do these records show? Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, Sargon of Akkadian, who conquers from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean around 2250 BC. Egyptian pharaohs for 2,000 years, they control Egypt. Chinese emperors for 5,000 years, they control China. Indian Maharajas. Raja means king, Maha means great. And then you have Cyrus of Persia had the largest empire, and conquered by Alexander the Great, who had the largest empire. Conquered by the Roman Caesars, who had the largest empire. Conquered by Attila the Hun, who had the largest empire. Conquered by Muslim sultans and the Byzantine emperors. And Genghis Khan conquers from Korea to Hungary, kills 30 million people, and has the largest contiguous land empire in world history.
Wow.
And it's sort of like a nautilus shell. You know, that little shell that's there's a teeny little circle, then it comes around with a little bit bigger circle, then it comes around with a bigger circle, right? You know, and so these empires, you track them, they keep getting bigger and bigger. Clearly, there's a global goal in mind, and if it wasn't for death, one of these dictators would have the whole world under their thumb by now. But by the time of the founding of America, the most powerful king on the planet was the King of England. The sun never set on his empire. He had all of India, a quarter of the world's population right there, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, countries in Africa, from Egypt down to Kenya to South Africa, and had Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and America. And when America's founders got the opportunity, they wanted to set up a government that was as far away from a king as possible. So they flipped it and made the people the king. So a republic, right? We pledge allegiance to the